Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Lift. During the month of August, we're talking about faith fixer upper and how we can go from some character flaws to some spiritual growth that will help us to have the best life possible, a blessed life, a useful life in God's service. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a serious problem going from lust, uncontrolled, inordinate desire, intense desire, to instead purity. Purity is what we want as a Christian. Now, to understand this, we're going to go to the book of Genesis in the 39th chapter, where we read about a very special man by the name of Joseph. It says in chapter 39 and verse 1, Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. So you remember Joseph's brothers had sold him into slavery. The Ishmaelites sell him to Potiphar, and he becomes the person in charge of Potiphar's household. He's so responsible. He is so capable that good things are happening. In fact, God is blessing him. He didn't want to be a slave, and yet God was helping him to be successful. It says, as you continue down in verse 6, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he's put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And as she spoke to Joseph day by day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her or to be with her. So she didn't stop. She didn't take no for an answer. She kept flirting. It says in verse 11, but one day when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by the garment. It wasn't just words now. She got physical. And she says to him, "Lie with me." Well, what did he do? It says he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. As soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." Well, when her husband gets home, she says the same thing. Maybe she thought that Joseph was going to report her. Maybe she was mad. Maybe she was embarrassed. But what happened when Potiphar heard about it? He believed his wife. And so he had not only did he get angry, but he cast him into prison. But here's what verse 21 says, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So Potiphar's wife falsely accused him, and he ends up in jail, but he did the right thing. There was a blessing for being faithful to God and living a life of purity. There's so many temptations in our world because of technology, because of the media, because of our mobility. So many different temptations that come in the form of lust. And it can be lust after material things. It can be lust after pleasure. It can be lust after the flesh. There's a lot of different kinds of sinful addictions that can come to our lives. But when we look at this, we find great encouragement in our life to resist, to live a life of purity, of chastity, of morality, of virtue. And so as Christians, we remember in Hebrews 13 and verse 4, it says that marriage is honorable and the bed should be undefiled. So we need to find the satisfaction of the desires we were created with inside of the family where God intended to provide meaningful intimacy and where He wanted to provide for your physical health, to build up trust, to build up connection, and not go outside, because it's not only wrong and hurtful to others, but it will hurt you. You know, over in the book of Proverbs, it tells us in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 27, can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Or can he walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? In other words, you play with fire, bad things are going to happen. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to say no. We're not going to let our mind go there. It's your brain, it's your mind, it's your choice. And so what do we need to do? Well, Joseph shows us one thing: flee. And Paul tells us flee youthful lusts along with those who call on God out of a pure heart. I'm sure he was thinking about Joseph when he wrote those words. Get yourself out of that situation. Avoid those situations. And when you find yourself in a compromising situation, get out of it just as quickly as you can. And God says He will provide a way of escape. I think we can pray about it. We can ask God not to lead us into temptation, but to deliver us from evil. God, I need your help to stay out of trouble. And if temptation raises its head, to resist it. I think one thing we need to do is think ahead. You know, if you can just think 24 hours ahead, think, how will I feel about this tomorrow? How will my spouse feel about this? How will my family feel about this? It will make all the difference in the world. And how will God feel about this? I want to be in heaven. And I know that I need to live a life of purity. I may not be perfect, but I need to be faithful. And I need to resist sin. So I can rehearse, I can pray, I can avoid, I can escape, I can project. There's lots of things that can be done. I know that you're going to come up with a great list as well. But the main thing is to be pure of heart. You have to desire purity. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring all of the issues of life. And the issues that we have with sin go back to our desire to please God. We want to please Him by being a living sacrifice, living a life of self-control, so that we can have purity that protects us and pleases God. Well, that's our Faith Fixer-Upper. I hope you enjoy your discussion questions, and thank you for being a part of our Sunday Night Lift ministry. God bless.